Freedom's the answer. What's the question? You're listening to Ernest Hancock.
Paul Loeb, we're going to be talking, this is a good conversation that, a lot of times those on the left, the libertarians, need to have this conversation because the issues are different. When you're talking to a conservative, what happens is you get this, we're definitely stealing the people's money. No, there's going to be guns to foreheads. We got this pile of money. Now it's what we're going to do with it. Now, dealing with libertarians is a little bit different. Can I not have a 45 in my forehead? How about that? I vote that, okay? Well, that's where the conversation comes in. Now, your book, author of Soul of a Citizen, Living with Conviction in Challenging Times. Tell me about that. What challenging times are we in? How would you define them as challenging?
Well, I define them challenging a couple of ways. Most of us, depending on how old we are, but most of us have lived our lives in a period of relative prosperity that started kind of around kind of in the wake of World War II. And it's been going, it went solidly through the early 70s, and then it started declining for most average citizens for the last 30 years.
Since we went off the gold standard, you mean back then?
Well, I actually wouldn't, from my perspective, it would be when corporations started saying, you know what, let's run everything, and we don't have to give paid working wage, and we don't have to recognize unions, and we don't have to keep our jobs in America. We can just send them all overseas, and on. We can do trade
because
deals.
They used government to ensure their monopoly.
Yeah.
And they got advantage, and they could do whatever from the force of government, and they printed all kinds of money for them to be able to borrow and get first crack of before it got inflationary to the people. And let me think of what the source of all that was. The government, okay?
Well, see, I would say that it was both, actually. That we've had, if you say, have the corporations gotten what they've wanted? Again and again, they have. And so the playing field gets tilted more and more against the little guy or little gal.
They got what they wanted from whom?
Well, they got it from the government, but doesn't necessarily have to be that way.
Ding. What do you mean it had to be? It's always going to be that way.
Well, actually not. You may not like the policies, but in that previous period where the wealth was just way more spread out, what I think is a good way was certainly if you're middle class, it was much, much better period that I was growing up. Then that, government was kind of playing it differently because people were speaking out and saying, you have to.
No, they had to because they were restrained by gold. When they took it off of that...
More than gold.
No, it's let me put it this way.
So look a second at the financial crisis because, we're going to talk about England at some point, and, that's a trigger over there. It's a trigger over here. This financial crisis comes, and, pretty well, all sorts of regular folks get creamed by it. There are some people who are hedging the market and playing the other bets, but by and large, all sorts of folks got creamed. My wife, gets this little statement, progress towards your retirement goal, with this arrow heading straight down. And, that's not the situation that most people want to be in. So you look at that and you say, okay, what triggered it? To my mind, and this is where, there are some differences, but I think, this is a great show to hash them out. To my mind, when they started deregulating the financial structure, and they actually did that, in the Clinton years, there was with the Republican Congress and Clinton and the presidency that agreed on this, and they basically took away rules that had been there since the Depression, that had worked just fine, that we'd had a great economy under, the best ever in our history, and they said, we don't really need these things anymore. We don't need Glass-Steagall. We can, these people can regulate themselves. And, they started doing more and more complicated things that the average investor just had absolutely, it's like the fine print on the fine print on the fine print, and you can't follow all that stuff. No normal person.
I would imagine that you have seen the documentary and the Oscar winner Inside Job, right?
I saw parts of it. It's on my list, and I need to get it.
No,
everyone I know loved it.
Yeah, you need to watch it.
I do. I agree.
And when you look at that from a libertarian perspective, we're going, what'd you think was going to happen? You go, they regulate themselves using what? the government. And I'm going, the only way they were restrained, that they couldn't do what they did, was if they weren't able to just print money.
Well, not just the government. I mean, Moody's and those folks, I mean, they were asleep on the job. I mean, like, oh, this is like AAA rating. This will never fail.
Because of government.
And, come on, and then boom, it's like all funny money.
Well, my brother works for Moody's. He's one of the raters. You imagine the conversations we have.
I can imagine.
So the thing is, I'm going,
how does he justify how they screwed up so badly?
He goes on past performance. Oh, well, these things did. I go, look, they made up the past performance. Look, here's this financial instrument. Look how great it's doing. It did great last week. It did
the rules don't apply anymore.
Yeah, no, they just make this stuff up as they go along. And then when S&P downgrades them, what happens? The government comes and starts investigating S&P. So I'm just going, this is heck no. You have the government goes to these rating agencies and they say, these rating agencies determine whether we can hold these kinds of bonds or not. And they go, so they're AAA, so all of these pension, your wife's pension is, okay, we're investing in it. Why? Because they said it's AAA. Why'd they say it's AAA? Because somebody paid them to say that. Well, who said that what they said mattered? The government. Oh, okay. End of story, man. You don't even need to go any further than that. So I'm just going, when you have limited types of things that they can do, it's tied to gold. They can't keep printing the money. This stuff doesn't happen, Paul. It doesn't happen.
I would actually argue this. What I would say is, if you want markets to function well,
leave them alone.
Well,
prosecute fraud and deceit. Prosecute force.
It's just set some rules of the road.
Like don't lie, don't steal, don't cheat.
Yeah, those are good. I like those.
Yeah, what else do you need?
I think those are good. That's a good start. So you set up some rules that say,
don't lie.
Don't lie is really good.
Well, that's what's going on with the banks right now. They're saying, look, you did this mortgage-backed blah, 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 said it was this, it wasn't. Guess what? You got to buy them back now. And they go, wait a minute. Can we get some congressmen and use the government so we don't have to? Government. There you go again.
Well, see, what I would say is, so for example, I was just talking to some people in Boston, and like everywhere, there's tons of foreclosures. And they've been working with a local community group they work with a local community. It's either a credit union or a community bank. I can't remember which. And basically, that bank said, we're happy to buy them at a lower principal, give them something they can afford, keep them in their home. We want to do this. But Chase and those folks say, I'm sorry, you bought this for $400,000. Too bad it's only worth $300,000. Too bad that we lied on the fine print. And they go to the auctions and all sorts of people. They say, look, this is what this fine print said. I like what they're doing. All nonviolent, no rioting or anything like that. And but they're basically pressuring successfully Chase to drop the amount of the mortgage, sell it over to this other community bank, and people stay in their homes. And then the neighborhoods don't go to hell because if you have a bunch of foreclosed abandoned houses, nobody wants that in a neighborhood.
Well, let me tell you what's more common around the country.
Yeah.
You'll have people like here in Arizona, man, we got plenty of foreclosure thing going on.
Oh, it's huge,
So then you have, we'll sell it short. We want this $500,000 home. We'll renegotiate it and we'll do it $300,000 and we'll stay in the house. Nope. Then they foreclose. They sell it for $200,000, and they go, that was better for them. Why? Because some government program made up the difference, and they made more money from the taxpayer funds that my granddaughter have to supply. And I'm going, government, bad.